It is now July 2025. We're going to salt this piece of pork. We're going to put it into this barrel. We're going to add brine to the barrel. We're going to seal the barrel, and we're going to try and leave it undisturbed in a nice cool place that will mimic the hold of a ship, basically. We're going to leave it there until February next year, minimum. I'm going to try and make it last a whole year. We cannot underestimate salt. Imagine it's the 16th century. Imagine that you're going on a journey of a week or a month, or in the case of some explorers, 4 years. You cannot stop at a service station. You have to take everything with you. And how are you going to do that if you have no refrigerator? The answer is that you salt your food. There was nothing written down in the 16th century about how to salt food, how to treat food with salt, because everybody was doing it, and it's very, very easy. You take a joint of meat, you put some salt on it, and you leave it there for a couple of weeks and it dries out. Once you've removed about 30% of the moisture, the bacteria has a harder job to work on the meat, and that's how it preserves for longer. But everybody was doing it in the 16th century, right up to the beginning of the 20th century. So now I'm going to show you how easy it is. I'm going to get a piece of pork and we're going to put it into a barrel. Let's take this away. There we go. There is no rhyme or reason. Sometimes you've got a bit of head, sometimes you've got a bit of foot. Everything was used, the whole animal was cut up and put into a barrel. Okay, I'll introduce you to the barrel. Barrels, they were the IKEA bag of the Tudor period. They were used for everything. They were used for wet goods, they were used for dry goods, they were used for gunpowder, for example. So a keg like this size is a typical gunpowder barrel. But on board ships that were traveling a long, long distance, big barrels were being used to store water for drinking, to store salted meat, for storing biscuits, for storing dry goods, for storing clothes. And they are flat pack. So the banding would be taken off once the barrel was empty, and it's sort of like self-retaining as well. The barrel is that shape, so it can keep water at an even pressure on the inside. So even though they're oak staves, once this is filled with salt water, there should be no leakage. In Tudor times, they wouldn't really have had iron hoops on there, only in special circumstances. Usually it was bound with hazel. But I'm going to use a hammer to take the banding off. Oh, this one's actually come off by hand. There we go. And you'll notice that the staves, let me just give this a bit of a whack. There we go. You'll actually see the staves of the barrel come apart a little bit, and you can actually see daylight in between the staves. Now, I'm going to fill this barrel with salted pork, and then I'm going to close it back up again. This will be a sealed unit and airtight. So we've got a layer of salt at the bottom of the barrel. As I say, there's no rocket science here. It's just covered in salt. Within 2 or 3 hours, this will start to solidify. First one goes in the barrel there. So with that one, we just repeat until the barrel is full. Rolling and covering in salt, packing it into all the little creases. So I'm now packing more salt in, because you don't really want any of this meat to be touching. So it's going to brine and salt separately. There was generally expected to be about a 10% failure. So there's no guarantee that this is going to work. I just hope that it will. But we'll soon find that out. Last piece. In you go. See you next February. Okay. Have my lid. I'm going to start putting the rings back on. and that should pull the staves in nice and tight. I think it's actually working. So far so good. The lid's now firmly in place. Can't see any light between the staves. We'll soon find out when we try and fill it with brine. I think we are there. Okay, this is the brine mix that I've made earlier. I'm going to be pouring it into the barrel. Brine is just salt and water. And the meat is so densely packed in there that I don't think we'll need much. When the brine starts coming out the top, it's full. Unless it's leaking out the bottom. There we go. That's full. Nothing in the Tudor world is ever simple. It's full now, it might not be tomorrow, so over the next few days I will check it, and we know that they used to do that in the Tudor times as well. Before a barrel of salted pork went on a voyage, it was checked for about a week before it was actually put on board, just to make sure that the brine was topped up. Stop her in. There we go. Here is one that I prepared earlier in true Blue Peter fashion. This is salt pork that I actually put into this kiln jar in January. So what's in here is looking like that, and hopefully it'll stay looking like that. It won't go a different funny colour. Okay, we're now going to take it to somewhere nice and cool and dry, and nowhere's better than actually Fish Court. Okay. Fish Court was designed to keep fish. It's orientated east to west, so the sunlight, even on the longest day of the year, never penetrates down to the flagstone. It's always in shadow. The Tudors built most of the things to work with the environment. Often they used to flood the flagstones, and it's the same principle as your fridge at home. The evaporation and condensation of cold gases used to keep the fish and the meat that's stored either side of here nice and cool. All along Fish Court, there are larders just like this one here. And this is going to be the perfect place for our barrel for a while. There you go. All right, here's my barrel. It's been 7 months stored here in a cupboard at Hampton Court Palace. It is now February 2026, and we're about to open the barrel. What is the significance of having this barrel stored for 7 months? If any of you have heard of Sir Francis Drake, he went on a circumnavigation of the globe to make Elizabeth I rich, and himself, of course. After 7 months, he was on the Atlantic coast of Patagonia, right down the tip, waiting to go through the Straits of Magellan, at a place called St. Julian's Bay. It was pivotal in his whole voyage. It was there where he executed his best friend Thomas Doughty for treason and witchcraft and all sorts of things. But it was at that stage that we know from their journals that they were eating salt pork, still salted from England. They were also augmenting their diet with whatever they could scavenge, things like mollusks, mussels, etc. from the seashore. We know from lots of the records that there was an amount of spoilage. About 10% of the barrels taken on board ended up being spoilt, and I'm hoping that this one isn't. In a hold of a ship, they would have inspected the barrels to make sure that they were okay. During the winter time, I needed to top up a little bit of brine in here. I'm a little bit worried because it's actually leaking out now. So either it's expanding inside the barrel or there's fermentation going on in there, which means that the whole of the barrel is spoiled. But it smells okay. So we've taken the lid off of the barrel and it's exposed the meat on the inside. I'm just looking in. I'm not happy with the colour, but then I expected it to be quite dark because it's in an old brandy barrel that's been charred on the inside. We'll just get a little piece out. The moment of truth. There it is. Pork that's been stored into a barrel for 7 months. The top of it is quite dark. The underside looks like pork. And it smells reasonably fresh. It actually is very, very solid, so that means that the brine has penetrated all the way into the meat there, so I'm quite happy with that. And if you've ever heard of the word flesh hook, this is a flesh hook for hooking flesh. You can actually still see some of the remnants of the salt here that I packed it in 7 months ago. In the 16th century, they didn't use sodium nitrate or saltpeter in their meat, which removes botulism. So this is just pure salt, and I'm very, very pleased with that. The meat at the bottom of the barrel still has a massive layer of salt over it, which I'm happy with. The colour is also better at the bottom as well. So if I was being selective about this, this is the meat that I'll be cooking, not so much the one at the top. You may be able to see that there's still quite a lot of salt in the bottom of this barrel. So it hasn't dissolved into the brine solution, which means that it's totally saturated. The meat is really rock hard, which means that it's been completely salted, and I'm very happy with it. One of these chunks is about £1, and that is every sailor's daily meat allowance. They're not given a chunk, it goes into a pot, a communal pot. By comparison, you can have a look at this pork here. This is pork that I've salted for a year in a glass jar. I trust this a little bit more than that one, but the colour isn't as good. This pork is going to go into a dish called lobscouse, or scouse. This is why we have scousers in Liverpool. You cannot eat this meat as it's come out of the barrel, though some people did. We know that they did. They ate it raw and they ate it salty because they were really desperate. We're not that desperate. So we're going to take the salt out of it. We're going to desalinate it over 3 or 4 days by putting it in water and just changing the water as often as we can. Sailors in Tudor times, and we know this happened on the Mary Rose, they would put their meat ration into muslin sacks and drop it over the side of the ship and let it trail in the water. And so you're actually removing salt by having it trailing alongside the boat in seawater. Each sailor was issued a certain amount of poundage of food per day. All of their food allowance was put into a communal stew, and they were given the equivalent of their food allowance in a stew. So we've already talked about lobscouse, the most common stew. There were 2 pork days a week. There were a couple of salt beef days a week, and there are also 2 fish days a week. This is called stockfish. I've air dried this fish. This was a 900-gram pollock. It's called stockfish because you need a stick to bash the fibres to get them to rehydrate. Again, these were dragged in the sea alongside the ship to rehydrate them. The added benefit of having fish 2 days a week is they're very, very easy to store once they're dried. You can hang a lot of fish close together in the hold of a ship, and you can feed a lot of people with that. You also had a pound of ship's biscuit given to you a day. So we now call this hardtack. Again, it's just concentrated wheat flour that's baked low and slow. Peas or beans were the staple pulse. This is Carlin pea. Peas were not green in the Tudor times. In 16th century, 17th century, they formed part of everybody's everyday food allowance, basically, not just sailors. Also, on a fish day, you are entitled to 8 ounces of butter for the 2 fish days, and that would be put into the stew that was made with the fish. It works out at about 5,000 calories per day per man. That's an astonishing amount, but if you're climbing rigging and you're trying to sail a ship across the Atlantic, you need a lot of calories. This meat in here is about enough for 10 men at one meal. If you imagine that the crew of the Mary Rose was 400, they were getting through an awful lot of meat, and you realise quite quickly that the Mary Rose was floating larder with guns. So now we're going to start the process of desalination. It's simply this, like you put your meat in there, you cover it with water, and you keep doing that over the next couple of days. We can just keep changing the water as often as we possibly can. I'll put it back into the cupboard where I stored the barrel, and that'll keep it cool while it desalinates. As I said, in 16th century, they did expect about a 10% failure rate. I'm liking the way that this looks, and I'm liking the way that it feels, but we'll have to see when we finish cooking the whole stew. So I'll see you in 3 days' time. Okay, so I've had the pork soaking for 3 days, taking all the brine out of it. I fried off the meat in this cauldron here, and then added water to it, the same as the Tudors would have done. Boiled it up for a long time, 4 hours the meat got. Added the peas and added the ship's biscuit to thicken it up, and it's really nice and stewy now, as you can see. Definitely no frills fare. So it's time to taste the stew. This is the acid test. I'm not going to do it on my own. I'm going to invite one of my colleagues here, Isaac, who's going to taste it with me.
Hello.
Hello there.
This looks great. What is this?
This is ship's stew, or lobscouse as it later on became to be called. So it's we've got salted pork in there. We've got carlin peas, or badger peas as they were called. It's also got onions in there and ship's biscuit.
So this is the pork that's been sitting in the cupboard for 7 months?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been sat out there in heat and in cold. So it's been mimicking a ship's hold, basically, on a 7-month voyage across the Atlantic.
So this will kind of be the last bit of meat that we might have on our journey.
And on Sir Francis Drake's ship, they did record the fact that they were eating the last of the pork from England that was salted.
Wow, incredible. It's nice to see you've added a little sprinkling of parsley.
Yeah, zhuzhed it up a little bit. They probably didn't have parsley, but you know, we've spent the last 7 months on a ship bonding, I thought I'd give you a little bit of frou-frou.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
But it's going cold.
Yeah, so let's dig in.
Yeah, please do.
All right.
There is some lumps of ship's biscuit in there, so the pork is
That's
the irregular
pork
shape.
there.
I'm going to have a piece of that. There we go. With some peas.
Oh, a bit of parsley as well.
Bit of parsley. Even though it's had 3 days taking the salt out of it, it's still quite salty.
But not overly salty, I don't think. No, I feel like the salt is more in the stew itself rather than just in the pork.
The pork is actually very, very soft and it breaks apart. So, I mean, I have boiled it for 4 hours, but it's really, really nice. It's good, hearty stew. And when you think that the Tudor sailors were getting through about 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day on this alone, it proves that it's a hearty meal.
I'm going in again.
Ooh, me too. This is much more enjoyable than I thought it would be.
I think if I've been on a ship for 7 months and I was served that, I'd be well chuffed with that. That's fantastic.
Look, day in, day out for 7 months.
That's a bit of biscuit there,
That's
isn't
the
it?
ship's biscuit. So, it's been boiled for over 4 hours and it's still that solid.
It's still really solid.
It's quite spongy, isn't it? Should be quite a bit like toast.
Yeah, I mean, it just tastes like bread.
You're my hero. You're tasting everything. It's really good. And it is crazy to think. I mean, you can break your teeth on these.
Do you know how long they would last? I mean, do they just last forever? Do they go off?
They last indefinitely, as long as you keep them dry.
An easy thing to do on a boat.
Yeah.
It has been really cool to watch you do these experiments over the past year and coming in and seeing what new concoction, what percentages of salt you're mixing into your brines. And amazing that this experimentation allows us to kind of recreate the foods on these voyages in the 16th century and just how important salt is and kind of the wonder food that it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it looks fairly innocuous. We've all got it on our dinner tables at home, but people wouldn't be speaking the languages that they're speaking in places around the world. So Spanish in South America wouldn't be a thing if the Spanish couldn't get across the Atlantic, and they only did that through salt. My slogan is that a 10% salt solution will get you 100% across the Atlantic, and this proves that it does.